PBS's masterpiece premiered a new version of Les Miserables stateside this year to critical acclaim. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, here with one of the show's stars, Lily Collins, who plays a very tragic Fantine in the new adaptation. Lily, this series sets itself apart from previous adaptations as a dark period piece with no music. Did that attract you to this role?
It definitely did. You know, I've been a huge fan of the musical and the novel since I was a kid and since I was aware of what Broadway and what the West End was. But to me, I always felt like there was another story to be told without music. And the idea that, especially with Fantine's character, so much of her storyline is told through song lyric. And you don't really ever get to see her happy. You don't get to see her have friends or fall in love, have a child. And so for me, it was a huge draw, the ability to allow an audience to feel empathy for her in a new way and to really feel even more invested in her storyline so that at the end of her life, you feel like you've lived through a happier time, seeing as though we never really get to see her smile in other renditions. So it was really important for me to be able to do that. And it was a huge part of why I felt even more excited to get to be this Fantine in the BBC version.
You know, we'll talk about some of her other scenes, but I really still can't get that deathbed scene out of my head. Like, it was so harrowing to watch her because we really, I don't know what it is about this character, but audiences attach themselves to Fantine. There's something about her, and you absolutely nailed that side of her. And when she eventually dies, and it's not a spoiler, we all know that's
right.
The whole point.
I keep saying that to everyone when I go, so when I die, and they're like, well, you can't say that. And I'm like, if you know anything about Fantine or Les Mis, you know she dies halfway through.
Yeah, not a spoiler alert. But I just would love to hear you talk us through the shooting of that particular scene, because to me, it was the absolute highlight.
Oh, thank you. Believe it or not, that was my second day of filming. They had us come in, I think we started, I believe it was in February. And so it was minus temperatures. Amazing, actually, though, to be in these remote locations in Belgium, in these abandoned houses, and the rafters, you know, were exposed and it was freezing. And all the elements really aided, at least me, in terms of all the things that Fantine would have been feeling at the end of her life. I genuinely felt like I was feeling a lot of them myself. But it was the second day of shooting. And I had looked up online research on symptoms of what it would have been like to have contracted all of the diseases that she would have gotten at that time. And whether it was, you know, quivering of the face or choking on blood, the sweats, the blue lips of being so cold that you're shivering. She can't really speak because she's choking on blood. So it was all these things to keep in the back of my mind, as well as obviously remembering I have, you know, British accent, but also no two front teeth. Therefore, I would have had a lisp. So it was kind of trying to think of all these things, but at the same time, Tom wanted it to be very glazed over because she's cognizant, but still doesn't have enough energy to be aware of so many things. So there was a lot of things going on in my head. Not to mention the fact that Dominic West, who is, I just love him, but he's also very funny. And he was staring at me with these green screen teeth in had a retainer with these green screen teeth so that they could black them out in post. And he couldn't keep it together sometimes and was laughing, and then I'd start laughing. It was good though, because it kept us all in good nature throughout filming. But it was something, I'd never done a death scene. I didn't really know where to begin, but it was kind of a group effort of everyone was very respectful. I really appreciated the crew on this project, because there are so many moments that Fantine goes through where I had to just, I think, truly be the most vulnerable as an actor that I've ever been, and just be completely in the moment and not have, you know, no sense of vanity, obviously, for Fantine at the end of her life. And so everyone was very respectful, and I really appreciated that, because I was really nervous on my second day, and then I got to work my way back to life.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And in developing her, did it weigh on you not to revisit previous versions of her, such as Anne Hathaway's Oscar-winning performance, and just bring something new to this?
You know, it really, it was helpful that Tom Shankland, our director, he kept saying, I really don't want you to revisit previous adaptations because I want it to be fresh. I want there to be a new perspective on it, seeing as though I got to show a younger side of her. So we got to really establish Fantine as a young person in a way that we haven't seen before. So any previous rendition wouldn't really have lent itself to ours anyway, because you didn't get to see her as a young person in the other ones. So that took off a lot of pressure right away, I think, knowing that he wanted to almost start fresh. And also, like you said, Anne Hathaway won the Oscar for it, and it was so beautiful in what she did. I wouldn't have wanted to replicate that. And the fact that we didn't have music involved in ours already lent itself to a different rendition of sorts. So we really went back to the text, and that's what we kept saying. Andrew Davies, you know, obviously adapted it so brilliantly, and he just found so much there for Fantine that no one had ever seen before, and not even just in the scripted sense. That was words. He found just the setting of Paris and the setting of all the factories, and all the characters themselves came alive because of the atmosphere they were in. And so we were very much starting anew in that sense. So it did take off pressure in a way.
You know, anybody who wants to watch this, and in fact, I've spoken about it with people, and they're like, oh, haven't they done that already? I'm like, yeah, but you need to watch this one because it's so different. It's very fresh. It's very now, but also it's completely engrossing, and you don't get to belt out the tunes like we've seen in other versions, as we've touched on. And yet the performances are so powerful, especially in how steely and strong Fantine is. And I think even in the most quiet of moments. But I always think, like, you're going to be put through the ringer to play her. What do you have to do? What do you have to prepare for emotionally and mentally to kind of put yourself in that mindset to play her?
It was really interesting. The prep for this was quite strange in that I found out that I was going to be playing this while I was prepping Tolkien. And so I went off to shoot Tolkien in Liverpool, started to look at, you know, revisit the novel and dive into work with Tom on the phone while shooting that in Liverpool. But then from that, I went straight into Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. And then I had a week in between that and going to Brussels to play Fantine. So it was a bit of a whirlwind in the sense of doing 3 projects back to back, but knowing about each one months in advance. So what normally would have been extremely stressful, I think, of a prep time, I almost had to limit myself on how engaged I could be at that moment with each of the 3, because I had to be focused in the moment of the one I was shooting. So everything was always in the back of my mind, but I'd be having these conversations with Tom where he'd say, so you know the scene where you're dragged through the streets? Well, it's as shown in the show, I am dragged through the streets by Javert, and Jean Valjean comes and rescues me. And it's that, you know, the ultimate scene where she's begging for her life. Originally that was scripted in the show as being inside at the police station. And he was having this conversation with me saying, wouldn't it be so much more visceral and embarrassing for her to be dragged through the snow and the dirt on the cobblestones at night? And I thought, oh, now we're going to add that on top of it. Like, yes, I kept thinking creatively. I thought, wow, yes, that's amazing. And then I thought, ooh, the experience is going to be so lovely, you know, but I didn't. Of course, what wins is what's going to be creatively more beneficial and guttural for the role. But I just kept thinking as I'm shooting 5 months before, oh my God, now I'm going to be dreading this even more, in a sense that I'm going to be even more vulnerable. But I think that because I didn't allow myself to stress that much, because I was working on so many different things before it really allowed me to enter into it almost more prepared in a sense, because I hadn't crammed anything. I was able to over a span of months really dive deep into it, and I was exhausted going into it. And luckily, like, you know, I said day 2 was my death scene, and we got to work my way back to life. So ironically, I don't die in Extremely Wicked, and then the second day I died on this. So I could almost get all the way to filming and then just let go. And that actually, I think, worked in my favor, because I got to utilize all of the feelings and the exhaustion that I had been feeling anyway from the other previous experiences.
Yeah. So take us back to the beginning. How did this role come about for you?
For me, it was quite a whirlwind. I was in England already prepping for Tolkien, and I got an email from my team just saying, you know, they're doing this new rendition of Les Mis. They were interested if you would want to come in for Fantine. And I had friends that were in the musical movie version a few years ago, and I just felt like it was already in my existence for a very long time. So I thought, oh, this is interesting, but what's the new take? And I saw that it wasn't a musical and that it was going to be, you know, for TV and 6 episodes. So I said, I'd love to, but what's the process? And they said, well, they could actually see you in London. I think it was either the next day or in 2 days. And like I said, I happened to be there. So I went in with Chris Carey, one of the producers, and casting, and Tom was supposed to be in the room, but he had just had a baby, I think 2 or 3 days before. So I went into the audition. Tom was running late. I had to get on a train to go to Paris late that afternoon. So I had very limited time. So I waited a little bit and then I said, I'm so sorry, but I have to catch a train. Tom might just have to see the tape. So we did 2 of the scenes, and they were the scene when I'm being wooed in the canoe with Felix. And then the other scene was the scene when I'm being dragged through the street, which was great for an audition scene. I thought, you're really running the gambit here. I get what you're doing, but woo. So we did that scene about 2 or 3 times. I felt like I'd given it everything. I was basically on the floor sobbing. And then Tom runs through the door and says, I'm here. I'm sorry. What did I miss? And Chris and I looked at him and went, I think you missed it, but, and I said, I'm so sorry. I have to catch a train. I really apologize. I don't think I can do it again. I don't have time. So he said, I'm so sorry. It's fine. I got on the train, went to Paris, and 2 days later, I think it was about midnight, I was packing my bags to go back to Liverpool, and I got a call saying that they had cast me. So I was in Paris, ironically, and it all felt very, very fast and kind of, it just happened so quickly. But it's one of those moments in life when you just roll with the punches and you go, I guess it was meant to be, in a sense.
Absolutely meant to be. And then you got to obviously play this iconic character. You know, Fantine is at her heart a very tragic figure in literature. She fails to break free from the poverty of her roots, and she dies trying to keep her daughter well cared for. Other characters see redemption, or they go through other changes, whereas Fantine tries and tries and tries, but eventually she can't quite get there, and it's so tragic for us, the audience. Why do you think audiences, though, are so drawn to her?
Well, because I think even though she dies, you know, her legacy and kind of the spark that she brought to Jean Valjean's life lives on throughout the rest of the series. And it's because of her passion and dedication and love for her daughter Cosette that I think Jean Valjean is able to seek redemption in a way. And because of his contact with Fantine and what he views in her and how he entrusts himself to her to take care of Cosette, I think all of those, that relationship between him and Fantine is what really carries him on through the rest of the story, and what ultimately helps give Cosette a better life. And I think it's just proof that even though you may not make the mark that you wish to see in the world or on your own life or on other people's lives while you're on the planet, you don't know what your legacy will continue to do for others. And I think it allows us to feel a sense of hope that even after we're not here anymore, our desires, our passions, our hopes and dreams can live on in other ways. And we all want to associate with that, because who doesn't? You know, she's a ray of light even in the dark times of this story, and she's the epitome of love and of hope. And I think part of why she didn't want to believe that Felix would do what he'd do is because she's an optimist. You know, she believes in love and she wants to see the best in people. And I think that's something that we all want to hold on to in our day and age, whether it's with people that we love romantically, our family, our friends. I think it's something that we can all relate to on some level, and you just never know the impact that you're going to have on people, or vice versa. And sometimes it takes generations later to see an impact that you've had.
Yeah, that is absolutely on point. And that's why, for me, for example, my favorite scene, you know, you've got so many great scenes, right? But my favorite scene is such a small moment when Fantine's in the factory and she looks up at Valjean and he looks back at her, and there's this connection and smile. And that was amazing. Like, so simple, but so effective. Do you have a favorite scene?
Um, I think, well, thank you. I mean, that, you know, Tom wanted a lot of the moments for Fantine to be unspoken, which I think, like, I love movies and projects that allow characters to live and breathe in the unspoken, because I feel like that's some of the most humane and human and connective scenes that we can all associate with. For me, the scene I dreaded doing the most, which ironically was an audition scene, but also the one that I felt so physically and emotionally exhausted, but probably the most proud I've ever been of something I've done, is the scene in the street when I'm dragged out begging for my life with Jean Valjean and Javert. I was physically bruised and battered the next day, but for me, I just had to forget everything else that was in the moment. I had to just be so focused in on her, and I've never felt so exposed and vulnerable as a human being, but as a character. And the temperatures, the environment itself was kind of working against us, or at least me, being very little clothed and being so exhausted and vulnerable. But I used all of it, I think, to my advantage in the moment and for what she would have been going through. And I pushed myself, I think, past limits I thought that maybe I had or that I was capable of. And I just went to bed that night kind of the most proud that I had been, because it will always forever be this project, but that scene in particular will be this kind of gem moment for me that I can just always hold dear and say, oh wow, I did it. I was nervous and I was slightly dreading it, but I did it. And I'm just thankful for everyone, you know, the crew and everyone for being so nurturing and respectful of it.
Now, unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I'll give you a two-pronged question, because your work to date is so diverse. Like, we've talked about Tolkien briefly and Extremely Wicked on Netflix, and you were in Mirror Mirror, and as far as my kids are concerned, you will always be the princess from Mirror Mirror. You were on Rules Don't Apply, for which you received a Golden Globe nomination recently. So my two-pronged question is, what's the project that people most want to bring up with you on the street? And secondly, how was Golden Globes night? Did you have a ball?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, the Golden Globes night was so surreal. Just to even be in a category with Meryl Streep was something that I don't think I'd ever in my life thought possible. But I took my mom as my date, and it was magic. I took in every moment. I was so wide-eyed, and it's as if I had just been put there from like another planet and was just taking it all in. But I was so honored to be a part of it, and I will never forget that night. So that was amazing. And the project, it's so funny. It's so diverse, actually. A lot of people, and this is really, really meaningful for me, actually, a lot of people bring up To the Bone, a film that I did, you know, for Netflix about a young girl suffering with eating disorders. And I don't think I ever would have thought that would have been something that people would have actively associated with or admitted to having either watched or felt connected to. But men, women of all ages from all over the world, I've been stopped in so many different countries, have said to me that it affected them because either they or someone they know or love had gone through eating disorders, and that they had you know, very much created more empathy towards people they knew, or that they were so happy to have seen something brought to life on screen to make more people aware of it. So I don't know if I expected that many people to have watched it necessarily, but also be open to talking about it. So that, for me, as someone who had gone through eating disorders and felt very connected to it, I felt very, very proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing, and quite unexpected. Well,
very unexpected, yeah.
Thank you so much, Liv, for your time. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I so appreciate it.
To all Emmys fans, go to goldderby.com right now. Make your predictions so you can compete against me and other editors and all the experts, and you can prove whether you are actually the smartest person in Hollywood. And before you do, click subscribe. I can never get that out right. And watch all of our other videos as well, because they're all amazing.